For some analysis, we're now joined by Gregory Mthembu-Salter, who's the director of Phuzumoya Consulting, specializing in research in the African political economy. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thanks very much. Good evening.
All right, so what do you make of the EU looking towards lifting the bans on Burundi? People inside the country are saying perhaps it's too soon. Has Ndayishimiye done enough, do you think, to convince that things have changed?
I think, it's a year since he came to power now, so they figure that, the EU figures that it's time to try a bit of carrot after quite a bit of stick. So they're kind of dangling out the hope to, the incentive to the president that if he continues with his thus far somewhat modest efforts to open up the political space, there may be more money where that came from.
So have things changed? If we're hearing from people signing petitions saying that that situation continues, and after all, he was handpicked by the previous president.
Some things have changed, some haven't. Look, there's still political repression. Journalists still can't operate freely. People are still disappearing. But you don't have any more of this COVID denialism that the last president had. He denied that it existed and then passed away from it. There's been a sort of easing up because Ndayishimiye has a better legitimacy than did Nkurunziza following a sort of illegal third-term bid. I think he's currently less paranoid, in a more secure position, and feels able to open up the space a bit. But the rights groups have a point. It's only a bit. So I imagine that they'll be looking to the EU to keep monitoring the situation and to go back to a tougher approach if things don't shift.
How much have these sanctions hurt over this time?
Well, that's the other thing. Burundi's in a desperate situation. That the whole region, the whole continent's taken an economic hit because of COVID, and the sanctions haven't helped at all. Burundi's in dire straits and it's in need of friends. It's been getting some support from the Chinese government. There's actually a historic link between the People's Republic of China and Burundi going back to the 60s, but it's not that much, and they want this development aid. And I think also the EU is worried about another humanitarian tragedy coming along, and then they'll be blamed for not having taken any steps to avert it. So I think they're trying to find the balance there.
So the EU is just one region in the whole world. How has Burundi related to other countries, Russia, China, even the US?
As I say, relations with China are quite good. It hasn't really translated into much money. Burundi doesn't have a great deal by way of natural resources. It's got some tin, some coltan, some gold, but it's not like its neighbor Congo. China isn't needing mineral real estate there in the way it's needing it from Congo. Russia, look, they export arms, nuclear reactors, advice on how to fix elections, and Burundians can manage the last one quite well without them, and they don't have the money for the others. So Russia's not really in it. And I think for the West, historically between Burundi and Rwanda, they're two small countries where if you give quite a lot of aid, you'll see something for it. And there was a period in the 80s and early 90s when Burundi was the sort of donor poster child. And after 94, it swung back to Rwanda. It swung to Rwanda and it's still there. And I think they've suffered for it, and the economy's in real dire straits. And moves by the previous president, which have been continued with this one, to move the administrative capital from Bujumbura to Gitega. Things like this are just a waste of money, really, and wasting money they don't really have to spare.
How is Burundi with its neighbours? Things in the past were sometimes quite tested.
Haha, yes, well, relations with Rwanda are very difficult. Nkurunziza and Paul Kagame, the Rwandan president, had terrible relations. Um, it's been less tense since, but I think there's still a conflict of interest there, and it's still uneasy. Um, with Congo, there are members of Burundian armed groups who are active in East Congo, and the Burundian government has, that is always a source of tension, but it's not. We're not seeing the chronic relations that we've seen sometimes in the past. I think I'd say Burundi's relations with its neighbours are testy, but not overtly hostile currently.
All right, so you say that the EU's offering this carrot, but I suppose the other way of looking at it is that Ndayishimiye might become more emboldened because then he realizes that he can carry on doing the things that he's doing because there's no one sanctioning him.
Well, yes, that's the possible calculation. I mean, Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni have been bankrolled, by the West for decades, and it has emboldened them. I don't know if we're quite at that point yet with Burundi. I think there would be governments in the EU who, if Ndayishimiye responded like that, would be wanting to turn off the taps again. I think it's probably, there's not a huge wellspring of support in Burundi just to excuse whatever happens. So yeah, I think he might get a more difficult ride than Museveni and Kagame.
What's the state of opposition politics since Ndayishimiye has been in power?
I think the space is still closed. Opposition leaders haven't come back, and wisely. I think as things stand, it would be foolhardy to come back. So most Burundian political opposition is either in exile or underground or in military fatigues in East Congo.
All right. So looking forward, then, what do you see? EU sanctions lifted, a bit of relief, but lots of hard work still to be done. One thinks.
Yeah, things should be. It will make a difference for ordinary Burundians. I hope. I think it means that humanitarian projects can move forward, development projects can move forward. Things might pick up a bit. You might see a bit of a modernization, a boost to Burundi's limited export economy. So there will be improvements here and there, but as ever, the real changes have to come from within and from within the political process, and that's still remote, I think.
All right. You mentioned denialism of COVID-19 by the former president. Has Ndayishimiye done a lot in terms of trying to combat COVID-19? Because we are seeing these third and fourth waves across the continent at this time.
Well, he's on better relations with the World Health Organization. He hasn't thrown them out. He's invited them back in. They're back in line, waiting for vaccines from the COVAX facility, and a limited number of vaccines are available to the extent to which the global North has deigned to let the global South have access to vaccines. So I think the take-up of vaccines has been quite low in Burundi, as we've seen in many parts of Africa. When I was in Congo recently, people were saying, well, they were finding it hard to distinguish between the symptoms of malaria and the symptoms of COVID-19, and they'd get what they thought was malaria and just sweat it out. So vaccine take-up is quite low, and I haven't seen great efforts by the Burundian president to get people to take it. He just hasn't been actively discouraging it like his predecessor. So that is progress.
All right. Gregory, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very, very much indeed for joining us, and your insights greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.